Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to the AI 2030 show. My name is Xiaochen Zhang, the CEO of FinTech for Good, and also the co-chair of AI 2030. And welcome to the show. And today that we have a special guest Anderson. And before we started the discussion, and I'd like to just have Anderson to introduce yourself.
Great, thanks. Well, great to be here. My name is Dr. Anderson Prewitt. I am somewhat of a, AI specialist. My background is actually in engineering, electrical engineering, and I eventually went on to my PhD in actually material science engineering. But my focus of my research kind of throughout the time I was in school was really on developing sensors and data analytics and figuring out from a hardware standpoint and a software standpoint how to understand information coming in and how to use it. Eventually, as I was going through all of the work I was doing, I got to a point where we started collecting so much data to try to make and create these sensors and understand these products and different things. We had to figure out a better and more efficient way to do it. And so that's where I had to start learning about big data, data science, and a lot of these AI and ML tools to help making the research and development process a lot easier and more straightforward. Fast forward, eventually, after doing the R&D for a while in academia, I worked with a number of different companies over the years, a couple, Fortune 500 companies, things like that. And then I started my own kind of practice, really trying to help, starting really helping small and medium-sized business figure out how to leverage the power of, the cloud, data, AI to really help them, innovate and grow. And so for the last probably, 15 years or so, I've been kind of focused on that route, figuring out how can we really leverage these tools to help, the masses, particularly in business and society really, do well and succeed. So that's kind of what I still do today. Just some of the companies and I work for are a little bit larger and some of the projects are a little bigger, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, and it's a very impressive background, and then you have the PhD on this subject, and then I know that you also taught in university, and you're doing it, as a practitioner. So, in your view, how has AI development evolved over the past decade, or just things you did your PhD till now? And what are the new trends? What are the more exciting things that are coming up now?
So okay, so now you just make me sound old, but I started with work with AI and stuff, right? I don't Python wasn't even a thing really, right? And so a lot of the some of the things we take for granted, some of the AI stuff and data analysis stuff I did was with very foundational level things, right? And so we use things like MATLAB and stuff like that, but a lot of times even using C or whatever, we're writing stuff by hand, right? And hard coding these things. And then eventually now we're at a point where it's really beyond just say one particular software, one particular thing. In my opinion, it's really taking us to where we're at today in terms of this AI kind of big boom revolution kind of thing, right? Because you got to look at it, right? One of the things that happened on the one hand was just outside, the computing power is way more now than it was, back then. Most of the algorithms, and honestly, a lot of stuff we're using, super excited about in AI, many of these things were things that were developed, years ago, decades ago, but the computers weren't powerful enough then. So people were doing a lot of these, calculations by hand. I was fortunate, I actually worked in a science library when I was in school. And so, when I was putting the books on shelves, I'd take a look, read them and stuff. And some of them I used for dissertation and things. And I found that most of the older books, you were able to figure out a lot of, impressive things to use because they didn't have a supercomputer to do it. So they were doing these math by hand. So they had a lot of ways to really try to take shortcuts and do, good jobs on the calculations and computations. And what's happened now is instead of having one by one to do it by hand and doing these things, a computer are so powerful they can do these things in millionths of a second, right? And that has exploded the capabilities we have to do these interesting things. So you have this combination of there's way more data than ever in our history as human beings, right? Everybody has a cell phone, devices, all the stuff we're collecting. There's way more computing power to do stuff with it. And these AI algorithms are getting more advanced and more things you can do, and they're being used in new ways. I mean, even just think of something like, ChatGPT and these large language models and transformers and things that they have now, most of those are a consequence of being able to put all these different other technologies together. And so I think that's kind of how we got to where we are now. And I think I'm really excited. I think what's going to be interesting is kind of what comes next, I think, in my opinion. And I think that's going to really be more around like, now that we have all this stuff and all this data and computers that can do so much, how do we do it in the right way, right? How do we make it so that humans understand what's going on? And how do we make sure that these systems, these things that we build are both secure, right? And we have security and it's not going all over the place. We still have the human computer interaction component, I think is going to be even more important. And just how do you really democratize the availability of the systems that we have to do the really cool, machine learning and deep learning and AI stuff? Like, how do you make that available or accessible to everybody in a meaningful way? So,
yeah, I really like the point that you bring the context to the AI development, because a lot of folks after ChatGPT was introduced by the end of 2022, and then suddenly that's generative AI becoming really extremely popular, and then no matter what you do and who you are, and then you're talking about it, you're using it, and then many of them just think, oh, it's just the was introduced from nowhere. But again, that's I like the point you bring, that it's not just come from nowhere. It's there's a lot of foundational component which make it happen, from the data, from the computing power, from all the evolutionary paths of AI. And I think that is very important. And of course that when you just looking at all the changes, and one part of that is who benefits from this, and then who are not, and then how can you just bring everyone together. And as AI is for many folks are new skill sets, and so that's why I think education is extremely important. And I know that you have been teaching in different universities and all that.
Yeah.
Can you just share with us why teaching AI is important, and then to universities, especially for those universities which are under resourced, and what would be the best strategy for university to just bring the right education to the right folks?
Yeah, but and I think that it's interesting. I think you're starting to see it in some places. Some places aren't. I think they're kind of picking up is the university kind of the model, right? I think it really got a wake up call and really got shaken in 2020. You had the whole pandemic. If you look at some of the issues that we talked about in all universities, in all places, everybody was locked down and couldn't interact in the same way. Everybody had to kind of be real nimble and agile about it. But the value proposition, right, for you go to some say really prestigious universities, wherever else, one of the value propositions is, the education is good, and we have great classes, but really it's about that experience, the college experience, university experience, that network, that name, whatever. And so like, if most of that is the experience and interact, whatever else, how much of that do you miss when you're not, say, doing it in person, right? And so that's something that a lot of these universities have to kind of grapple with in a very real way. I think that when you talk about something like AI and computer science and like data science, and kind of where this kind of tech revolution is going now, I think it's it's an opportunity, but also something that we have to confront directly as a university and as the model. Like, is the model, the amount of tuition we're charging, the service we have, and all these fees, is that worth it to students now, knowing they may leave with necessarily a mountain of debt and all these things, when you also have some, and I won't make a blanket statement for all like certificate programs or say for-profit institutions, whatever else, because some of them are, not necessarily the greatest, but but there have been over the years some that are actually really, really good. And you have corporate America and even other places that are valuing those certificates and those skill sets, and it's an interesting value proposition you have to have as a university, just from say a sales, just how do you market yourself, right? Like, hey, you can go and pay all this money, take out loans, do what you have to do, and 4 years later you'll have a degree, and then hopefully get a job and do what you want to do. Or in 6 weeks, get a certificate here, immediately have some projects, something you can use, and then go and work in that space and start making money right now. Now, I think there's pros and cons to both, but I think, because on the one hand, you made a certificate, but if you only learn that and don't learn all the other things you can learn in university, me personally, I think there can be some drawbacks to that, right? Even though you kind of have the cash now, but at the same time, I think that if you go to university, regardless, you have fun, you make the connection, you learn all the things. While that can be very valuable to you down the road, if you don't have the mindset and get those immediate skills, you're going to put yourself in somewhat of a deficit. So I think as the universities, they need to really be, focused on, one, how can we showcase and the, immediate value to the degrees and what people are coming here with and what you get from being involved with us, but also to be nimble and agile enough to, refocus and rethink their programs. So a lot of universities now, if they didn't have certificate programs in addition to degree programs before, they have certificate programs now. They have industry experts they hire or work with to see hey, here's the accredited curriculum. We still have that, make sure we're well-rounded, a lot of breadth, but also we have a practical angle so that every degree we give, everything you're learning, here's how you can use that at this business or in the real world, whatever else. So there's still that creativity and opportunity and all the things you get with the university education, but also with the specificity and the actual business and kind of industry involvement, so that these are directly transferable skills to whatever career or entrepreneurial endeavor or whatever thing you want to do. And so universities have to make sure that they're thinking about that, as well as any kind of for-profit or certificate program or other entity needs to make sure they're thinking about that and how they're training their graduates and people to make sure that they can not only work and do this specific thing, but that they have the critical thinking skills, the creativity to do other things as this industry, AI or whatever they're working on, evolves. And everything right now is evolving very quickly. So you have to be nimble and think about it. So I think that's what needs to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I fully agree. And I think, what you mentioned, that's university need to change, and many universities are changing. And there are also other, entities which have the capability, and then how to also take on some of the task or mission to just bring the right education to the right folks. And then of course that business or institutions have their things to do. And what about the learner side? That if for learners who are going to be impacted by AI one way or another, no matter you are a researcher or you are, in the application side, that's, your job may be impacted. So how do learners get ready and get prepared for the, AI age?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Like there's, this has definitely been the information age. And I think we're really at a point where if you look at just, how history has gone, right? We're in that fourth industrial revolution now, and way as but we could be in the fifth any day now, right? But it's one of those things where if you look at how just society as a whole has changed from the introduction of just the wheel to manufacturing to electricity to all the things steam engine, whatever, right? All these different things have taken us to another level and development just as a society. And while industry has had to take a big lead, society as a whole has had to adapt to, okay, what can we do now we couldn't do before? So as a learner, or just as a human being right now, you have to be willing to learn, right? So I mean, I have a PhD. I'm still trying to figure out, are there other classes I need to take? Do I need to learn? Like I was in school, but I still need to learn Python even with all my degrees, because you could, as it came out, and I still try to learn newer skills, even as I'm teaching other things, because unless you're willing to learn and willing to go out there and look at it, you're going to stagnate. I think that the good thing is we have access to more information probably now than ever before, in terms of just at our fingertips, between the Googles and now ChatGPTs and just the internet, and even just the people you can talk to through a Zoom or these other kind of things. We can actually directly connect information at a greater speed and a greater capacity than probably anytime in previous in human history. And because of that, I think everyone has got to take the ownership of the upon themselves to, when possible, where can I get access to resources, whether it's free resources, paid resources, whatever. Like everybody can potentially, at least I know in the US and other places, it's not hard to get like a library card. People are underusing libraries. I know they still have physical books, and it's like, oh, what's that? But libraries, in most places in the US, actually have a lot of access to a lot of really cool things you can use. Even things like podcast or audible books, whatever else. You can pay and you get Audible, whatever. But most libraries actually will give that to you for free, that the library card or whatever, right? And so if you have access to all the books that you can listen to, you can't read or not whatever else, you have access to, like, a lot of times they have course and training or free workshops and seminars. You can go on YouTube and watch videos about how to utilize this skill or AI and how it impacts you. I think that's something people kind of have to do almost on their own, or start taking ownership of their own education about kind of what's around them. Because by doing that, you can find out about other programs, other resources, or even if you're not necessarily gonna, I'm not saying necessarily watch YouTube and become an AI expert, you possibly can. There's a lot of pretty information out there. Some bad stuff too, but it's a mixed bag. But what you can do is open yourself up to learn and find out more information and see, even if I'm never going to touch a keyboard and try to say program AI, how can I make sure I understand, or at least understand enough to figure out how can I use it in my current job? What is it that I do now, or what is it that I want to do as an entrepreneur, whatever else? How can I leverage these tools, even if I got to partner with a developer or somebody else is going to make them? How can I leverage the stuff that's out there and the things that it can do? Can it do something for me, or can it help me do something, or can I help it? I think taking the ownership and looking at that will be what's really kind of changed the game for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I think the keywords here that is the ownership, right? And you own your own learning journey, and you also own your own career path. You earn, and I think that itself, to take ownership is really important. Now that we talk enough about, the society, the, learners, the educators, then that comes back to you. So any of the exciting projects that you're, doing now, and which you can share with us?
Yeah, there's a couple. Well, there's one actually pretty exciting. I can't share it yet, but maybe next week, right? But no, there's a couple of kind of really neat things I have been working on recently. So not I'll say a month ago, a little while ago. I did work on one project with a group in here in Florida. I'm trying to figure out how to better teach AI skills to the masses, right? So one of the groups there working on basically different programs to help with that educational piece for AI skills, for not just the specific, hey, teach high level, learn how to program a neural network or NLP or something, but like how can the average Joe access it and learn at least the basics of, hey, here's some basic transferable skills or other things. Also, here is AI. Here's what it is. How can you use it in your own job? And we have it, and we're working on trying to get the program for everybody from fresh, didn't go to school, doesn't have a degree, whatever, to even people, reentry, so whether you're coming in like reentry programs or any kind of disadvantaged groups or whatever, how can they access this stuff, at least the information about it, so they can use it in their own situation? So that's one of the things. We're working on, as another program, working on trying to help with training teachers so they can use AI in the classrooms to enhance what they do. And there's several things specifically that I've been kind of interested in. Some work with related to, like, I guess what you call smart agriculture and kind of food security, and how can you leverage AI to help with growing food and distributing food and getting people what they need when they need it, regardless of where they're at or economic level, things like that. As well as some I guess corporate stuff, trying to help a couple companies make more money and do more things, which is always cool. But I think the other three ones are kind of really excited about. Those are like, I think you want to. I think the coolest thing about this whole kind of AI revolution is it can definitely be used to make a lot of people a lot of money and be very successful. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. But I think it can really be truly transformative if we act, act rightly with integrity and kind of use this thing and democratize the data and the AI stuff available to share this technology with the most people to generate the most ideas and do the most kind of human good, right? And so that's kind of the stuff that really, I guess, excites me the most.
Yeah, and that's definitely very well aligned with the AI 2030 initiative that we work on. And key component of democratize AI knowledge and AI related opportunity, and also make the AI responsible. And there's a lot of other issues related to the application of AI or use of AI, from the fairness, bias, accountability, and privacy, and all those kind of issues which are really critical, and any of the AI application may have impact to customers or citizens one way or another, and how to just mitigate the negative impact, and then also to make sure that while the benefits are there, and then all the negative side of the risk can be controlled in a manner which all can benefit. Yeah, so I think that's definitely way of well aligned. And then go back to the responsible AI side. That's have you seen any interesting trend or interesting programs or frameworks, practice on responsible AI happen around you?
Yeah, I think yeah, so I think a lot of larger companies, organizations, I've seen both the financial sector, even some of the big tech sector, whatever, have started having at least some listed. Here are our main top 3, top 4, top 5 responsible AI framework pillars, right? So it has like transparency and just anti-bias, all those kind of things, right? So I've seen that companies, especially players in the field, have started to publicly say, hey, this is what we're supposed to stand by, so they can hopefully be held accountable based on that, which I think is a good thing. I think kind of more will need to be done. There's probably some policy stuff that's going to have to happen with that, but making sure the policy helps versus harms versus handcuffs, and that's a whole other kind of bag of worms, right? I think that one of the things I'm kind of most interested in, I think from a technology standpoint, and I think what in some ways may come first, in my opinion, or what will kind of give the most kind of bang for your buck kind of thing about it, is AI explainability, right? Because when you really look at the kind of frontier of AI and where a lot of stuff is happening now, a lot of it is these deep neural networks and things where you have these systems that at the end of the day are really kind of a black box once you finish with programming, and not even some of the most highly skilled programmers can tell you, I don't know why I made that decision, but it's the right one because it says so, and it's like a little more nuanced than that, right? But I think that's kind of a hard pill to swallow for most of the non-initiated and folks who aren't really into the space. I think that as we kind of advance certain technologies, whether it be some of the knowledge graphs and graph analytics and machine learning, things like that, or even just basic kind of protocols, do some reinforcement learning to kind of help with at least some rules and things in place. And there's some companies who are doing some really cool stuff in that regard. I think that whatever we can start with, and at least the explainability of AI, I think will help with both the policy side as well as the kind of democratization side and making it wider to the public, because it's hard to have the full conversation if half the audience you're talking to or more doesn't even understand kind of the base level context, and definitely if they don't understand how we got to this decision that we as humans know is unfair or right or biased or whatever, but the machine can't explain it. We can't explain how they got there, and then we just wind up talking at each other versus to each other. And so I think that kind of AI explainability piece, in my opinion, is probably one of the key steps to really getting to more general, universal, responsible AI, as I feel like it needs to be.
Yeah, and some other speakers earlier, for the AI 2030 show also mentioned about their work on explainability of AI, and the speaker from Discover, and also the speaker from the Illinois University, and then they shared some of the very exciting things that they are doing and how to make their I think one key message I got from all of you are to just be intentional is very important, right? And then you can just say that we just kind of, it's a black box, and but again, that is not good enough, and especially in the regulated industry, it's not going to be as a good thing to do. It's a must do thing, and where that's regulators will ask you to just explain your AI and your and from White House AI Act proposal, and it's very clear that consumers or customers have the right to know, and then if you are the provider, and then you have the obligation to explain. So in that regard, that I think
which is harder.
we needed to have a lot more work go into that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, the reason I think about it from I think somewhat a different perspective. Because like I said, my degree wasn't like I didn't get a PhD in AI per se. I wound up doing AI because I got a PhD in material science and engineering, mostly focused on actually building physical systems and really sensor systems. All right, that's what I was really interested in. And basically for me, I always look at AI is only a component of whatever the real full thing is you're building. That's just how I've always kind of approached it. And so if you think of it from that level, if I don't understand this component, or this component doesn't work right, or it's a black box, you just put it into your system, your robot, your whatever, then the whole thing is trash if you can't figure out how to fix that. Because if something breaks, something go wrong, you can't troubleshoot, you can't go back, and you can't essentially re-engineer it or engineer it better. And so as an engineer, that's always how I approach AI in general as a tool versus our new overlords or whatever people sometimes think, right? And so I think that when you look at it like that, understand of AI as a tool, you also bring to it the understanding that you're going to get better results if you have a human in the loop system versus just, hey, I'll figure it out and we don't even know what's happening. You'll always get better results if you understand, the better you understand what your program is doing, so that for both good and bad results, you can actually make more and do something better versus just let's just keep going this way regardless of if this is really the right way. Because the biggest problem I see with it is if you get too far down a path without understanding what's happening, then it's much, much more difficult to turn the ship around later and try to figure out how do we get here. And I think with AI becoming so, ubiquitous, that's something we really can't afford, at least if to your point, by 2030, the things we do in 2023 will directly impact what's going on in 2030. And so it's imperative that we kind of take a look at these things now related to AI, so that the AI that we see in 2030 isn't, more harmful than helpful.
Yeah, and yesterday I posted, a comment on how to make AI to be inclusive using the unlearning side, right? And if you cannot really explain how you get there, and then even you want to unlearn the bias, unlearn the unfair treatment, and you don't know what to unlearn, what skills that the AI already have, what how the bias was built into that, then to unlearn that becoming extremely next to impossible. That just basically, when you're from the cost side, either you have to give it up or that you have to really find out how to unlearn those bias, and then to reuse the, rebuild the model. And just, from a cost effectiveness side, that to make your AI explainable, also also adaptable, and that can just also help your system to progress with the cost which is managed. Otherwise, the chances that if you cannot explain it, you may have to give it up. All the investment you make into that may just disappear.
I definitely agree. I think that point and the capability of resilience is going to be, I think, even more critical as you get these more advanced programs. Where, to your point, once you dump all this money in, all this time, all these resources, if you come and find out years later there's a critical error, or if you're not updating your algorithm and it fails down the road, what do you do if you haven't built in these things in place or taken time to think about how to make sure that what you're doing, what you've invested in, is actually going to give you the return over the long term, not just immediately.
Yep, exactly. And is there any additional message or insights you would like to just convey to our audience about the future of AI or its impacts on society, jobs, and education?
Yeah, I think right now, with all the interest, all the opportunities, and all the things that are happening now, I think it's so important that, we as, scientists, as people in the industry, as kind of leaders, really truly engage with each other, as well as with the public, as well as with people who are necessarily not fans or not knowledgeable about this space and not necessarily excited as we are, right? Because, at some point it definitely, does become the question of, just because you can do it, should you do it? And if you should do it, how should you do it? And I think that's kind of the key real takeaway from a lot of these AI things, right? And, there's a whole camp of, the whole parts of the world, if you look at the greater population, probably, who really believe that unchecked, this AI thing could become, what is it, Skynet, Terminator, Ultron. That's where it's headed, right? And I don't necessarily think that's the case. However, I do think that it can have some very bad consequences if we, as a society, don't come together and really figure out how do we want to leverage and use this thing, AI, which is a tool. Like, it's not necessarily going to take everyone's jobs, but if we come in intentionally and be like, and understand, like, hey, here's what we want to use it for, here's how we can use it, here's how we can enhance people's jobs, which is how we can replace people, how we can enhance this community versus, not needing this community of people, versus, how we can help versus how we can harm. And we're intentional about trying to help versus harm. I think that what AI can do for us as a tool can be a very good thing for society as a whole.
Awesome. Yeah. And thank you for all your insights. I learned a lot, and I hope that others will have also enjoyed listen to this conversation, and then learned as much as I did from this conversation. And thank you very much. And for all the audience, and welcome back next for next AI 2030 show. And thank you again for my speaker Anderson. And if you want to reach out to him, what is the best way to reach out to you?
At Dr. A.D. Prewitt. On pretty much all the social media platforms, website, whatever. DRADPREWITT. I'm online. So
awesome. Okay. Thank you, Anderson, and you have a great day. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you. Have a good one.